Now we come to Sutta 5.3.26. This is another quite important sutta. The Buddha said, "Monks, there are these 5 spheres of release, wherein the unreleased mind of a monk, abiding zealous, ardent and resolute, finds release. All the asavas, not yet wholly destroyed, come to complete destruction. All the unsurpassed peace from effort, not yet attained, is won." What 5? Monks, take the case when the master or some fellow in the holy life who acts as teacher instructs a monk in Dhamma. While he teaches, that monk partakes of both the spirit and the letter of this Dhamma. From this experience, joy, pamoja, springs up, and from that delight, piti. In such a state, his whole being calms down. When he is calm, ease, sukha, is experienced, and for him who dwells at ease, the mind is concentrated. Monks, this is the first sphere of release, wherein the unreleased mind of a monk, abiding zealous, ardent and resolute, finds release. All the asavas, not yet wholly destroyed, come to complete destruction. All the unsurpassed peace from effort, not yet attained, is won. Again, monks, when the master or some fellow in the holy life does not instruct him in Dhamma, but he himself instructs others in detail, as he has heard it, as he has learnt it by heart. While he thus teaches, he partakes of this Dhamma and experiences joy, delight, calm and ease, wherein his mind is concentrated. Monks, this is the second sphere of release. Or else, he repeats Dhamma as he has heard it, as he has learned it, and while doing so, he partakes of this Dhamma and experiences joy, delight, calm and ease, whereby his mind is concentrated. Monks, this is the third sphere of release. Or else, in his heart, he ponders and reflects on Dhamma as he has heard it, as he has learnt it. He reviews it carefully in his mind, and while doing so, he partakes of this Dhamma and experiences joy, delight, calm and ease, whereby his mind is concentrated. Monks, this is the fourth sphere of release. Or else, some concentration sign, samadhi nimitta, is rightly grasped by him, rightly held by the attention, rightly reflected on, rightly penetrated by wisdom. And while this takes place, he partakes of both the spirit and letter of this Dhamma. From this experience, joy springs up, from that delight. In such a state, his whole being calms down. When he is calm, ease is experienced, and for him who dwells at ease, the mind is composed. Monks, this is the fifth sphere of release, wherein the unreleased mind of a monk, abiding zealous, ardent and resolute, finds release. All the asavas, not yet wholly destroyed, come to complete destruction. All the unsurpassed peace from effort, not yet attained, is won. Monks, these are the 5 spheres of release. It's the end of the sutta. This is a very important sutta, because here you find the Buddha is trying to say the different conditions where a person, a monk, gets released, or the asavas are destroyed. That means he becomes an arahant. And what are these 5 conditions? First one is hearing Dhamma, hearing a teacher teach Dhamma. And when he is listening to the Dhamma, he partakes of the spirit and letter of this Dhamma. And from this, joy arises, and then delight. And then because of these 2, he is calm. And when he becomes calm, the mind becomes concentrated. And when the mind becomes concentrated, that is the condition for wisdom to arise, and he gets released. So the first one is hearing Dhamma. That is why hearing Dhamma, the suttas, is very important. We pay attention and hear Dhamma carefully, put all attention there. It is possible, as in many suttas, the Buddha showed that a person can enter the stream. The second one is a person teaches Dhamma, and when he teaches Dhamma, because when he teaches Dhamma, he has to reflect on the Dhamma, ponder in his mind as to how to explain it, and then he partakes of the Dhamma, and joy, delight, calm and ease arises, and his mind becomes concentrated, and he attains release. That is the second condition. The third one, he repeats Dhamma. Repeating Dhamma is also very useful. It means You learn the Dhamma, and instead of just going in one ear and going out the other ear, you listen to it again and again. Or if you have the words of it, you repeat it. Especially certain suttas are very important. You keep on repeating it and you understand more and more. And so that is the third way you get release. You get attainment of Aryahood. The fourth one ponders and reflects on Dhamma. This is also very useful, to ponder and reflect on Dhamma that you have heard. Perhaps tonight you hear the Dhamma. Tomorrow, when you are more free, you can think about the Dhamma that you have heard, reflect on it, and perhaps you understand that in depth what was said, and then you can attain release. Then the fifth one is to contemplate the concentration sign, the sign of meditation. And when you contemplate on the concentration sign, the mind automatically becomes concentrated, and from there, concentrated mind, wisdom arises, and you attain release. So these are the 5 ways. Now, one thing you would like to note is that the condition for calming down the mind here is that joy and delight arises. Joy and delight arises. That means you got to have joy and delight. Not all dukkha, Meditation is not all dukkha. If it's all dukkha, joy and delight cannot arise. That is why in the suttas, the Buddha talked about the bliss of seclusion, the bliss of renunciation, referring to piti and sukha, which from where concentration arises. So remember that meditation is not sitting down and seeing a lot of dukkha. Too much dukkha, then you have no inspiration to meditate, can't keep it up. So you got to have this inspiration from the joy and the delight of meditation. And from there you be calmed down and attain concentration, and after that wisdom. So these are the 5 ways of attaining Aryahood. Remember again, first one is listening to Dhamma, second one teaching Dhamma. You can also teach Dhamma to somebody else if you have listened to it often enough from the tapes or from the books. Third one is repeating Dhamma. Repeat the passage of Dhamma again and again. The fourth one is to ponder and reflect on Dhamma. And the fifth one is contemplating the concentration sign. So if you want to attain to Aryahood, remember these 5 ways. Now the next sutta is 5.3.27. The Buddha said, monks, being wise and mindful, make become immeasurable concentration. For in those who do, verily in each one of you there shall arise a 5-fold knowledge. What 5-fold knowledge? 1. This concentration is verily a present happiness and a source of happiness for the future. Even in each this knowledge arises. Secondly, this concentration is Aryan, not carnal or of the flesh. Even in each this knowledge arises. Thirdly, this concentration is not the practice of base men or low men. Even in each this knowledge arises. Fourth, this concentration is the peace, the excellent thing, the winning of calm, the attaining of one-pointedness, and the restraint that prevails is not a conscious restraint. Even in each this knowledge arises. And fifth, mindfully I verily enter upon this concentration. Mindfully I verily emerge from this concentration. Even in each this knowledge arises. Monks, being wise and mindful, make become immeasurable concentration, for in each there shall arise this 5-fold knowledge. That's the end of the sutta. This is another sutta where the Buddha stresses home the point that concentration is very important. And these are the 5 advantages the Buddha said if you develop immeasurable concentration. Firstly, you attain happiness at the present moment, and it also becomes a source of happiness for you in the future. Why? Because if you remember one of the suttas I mentioned where the Buddha praised the Sangha of monks, he said there are monks in this Sangha who have attained concentration, and because of that, they are likely to be reborn in the Deva plane. So by attaining concentration, they have a very good chance of being born into the Deva plane. That is why it is a source of happiness for the future. Secondly, this concentration is Aryan. It is not carnal. This concentration has got to do with the Aryan path. Don't look down on concentration. It is an Aryan, it is a practice of the Aryans. Without concentration, the Buddha said that you can't attain the Aryan path. And the third one, this concentration is not the practice of base men, not the practice of low men. So here again, it is similar to the previous statement that concentration is Aryan. If worldly people cannot attain this type of concentration, and that is because the Buddha said that the jhanas is one of the Uttari Manusa Dhamma. Uttari Manusa means higher than human. A Dhamma which is higher than human. Sometimes we translate this as supernormal attainment. That means ordinary people can't attain it. You have to rise above the worldly level to attain this concentration. And then fourthly, this concentration is the peace, the excellent thing, the winning of calm, the attaining of one-pointedness. And the restraint that prevails is not a conscious restraint. This is a very important statement. The restraint that prevails is not a conscious restraint. What is this referring to? This is probably referring to the restraint of the 5 hindrances. The 5 hindrances. When you attain concentration, the 5 hindrances are automatically restrained, and it is not a conscious restraint. You don't have to make a conscious effort, for example, to curb your anger, because anger is one of the hindrances. Ill will is one of it is the second hindrance out of the 5 hindrances. But when you attain concentration, that restraint is automatic. You don't have to make an effort to be mindful to restrain your anger. It automatically becomes restrained. And the same with sensual desire. You don't have to make a conscious effort to restrain your sensual desire. The mind is so calm. It's not easy to stir a calm mind. So that is why this restraint is not a conscious restraint. And the other hindrances are sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry and doubt. All these are automatically restrained, and it is not a conscious restraint. It comes automatically with concentration. That is why the Buddha always stressed on concentration. And the 5th one also, the Buddha says, mindfully I enter upon this concentration. Mindfully I emerge from this concentration. Concentration, the state of jhana, is always to do with mindfulness. It is a very intense state of mindfulness. Without an intense state of mindfulness, you cannot attain the jhanas. So always remember that. Don't believe that jhana is a state of unmindfulness. It is definitely not a state of mindfulness. Here is very clear. Mindfully I enter upon this concentration. Mindfully I emerge from this concentration. So these are the 5 things. Now the next sutta is 5.3.28. Monks, I will teach you how to become the 5-limbed Aryan right concentration. Listen attentively and pay heed, and I will speak. Even so, Lord, they replied. And the Exalted One said, Monks, take the case of a monk who, secluded from sense desires, secluded from unwholesome mental states, enters and abides in the first jhana. He steeps and drenches and fills and suffuses this body with delight and pleasure born of seclusion, so that there is not one particle of the body that is not pervaded by this delight and pleasure born of seclusion. Monks, just as a handy bathman or attendant might strew bath powder in some copper basin and gradually sprinkling water, knead it together so that the ball the bath ball gathered up by the moisture became enveloped in moisture and saturated both in and out, but did not ooze moisture. Even so, a monk steeps, drenches, fills and suffuses this body with delight and pleasure born of seclusion, so that there is not one particle of the body that is not pervaded by this delight and pleasure born of seclusion. Monks, this is firstly how to make become the five-limbed Aryan right concentration. Or a monk, stilling applied and sustained thought, enters and abides in the second jhana. He likewise steeps this body with delight and pleasure, etc. Monks, imagine a pool with a spring, with no water inlet, either on the east side or on the west, or on the north or on the south. And suppose the Deva supply not proper rains from time to time. Cool waters would still well up from that pool, and that pool would be steeped, drenched, filled and suffused with the cold water, so that every part would be pervaded by the cold water. In just the same way, monks, a monk steeps his body with delight and pleasure. Monks, this is the secondly how to make become the five-limbed Aryan right concentration. Again, a monk, free from the fervor of delight, enters and abides in the third jhana. He steeps and drenches and fills and suffuses this body with a pleasure divested of delight, so that there is not one particle of the body that is not pervaded by this pleasure divested of delight. Monks, just as in a pond of blue, white and red water lilies, the plants are born in water, grow in water, come not out of the water, but sunk in the depths, find nourishment, and from tip to root are steeped, drenched, filled and suffused with cold water, so that not a part of them is not pervaded by cold water. Even so, monks, a monk steeps his body with a pleasure divested of delight, etc. Monks, this is thirdly how to make become the five-limbed Aryan right concentration. Again, a monk, putting away pleasure, enters and abides in the fourth jhana. Seated, he suffuses his body with brightness by the pureness of his mind, so that there is not one particle of the body that is not pervaded with brightness by the pureness of his mind. Monks, just as a man might sit with his head downwards, covered with a white cloth, so that not a portion of it was not covered with that white cloth, even so a monk sits suffusing his body with brightness. Monks, this is fourthly how to make become the five-limbed Aryan right concentration. Again, the contemplation sign is rightly grasped by a monk, rightly held by the attention, rightly reflected upon, rightly penetrated by insight. Monks, just as someone might survey another, standing might survey another sitting, or sitting might survey another lying down, even so the contemplation sign is rightly grasped by the monk, rightly held by the attention, rightly reflected upon, rightly penetrated by insight. Monks, this is fifthly how to make become the five-limbed Aryan right concentration. Monks, when a monk has thus made become and thus made abundant the five-limbed Aryan concentration, he can bend his mind to realize by higher knowledge whatever condition is so realizable, and become an eyewitness in every case, whatever the range may be. Monks, suppose a water jar brimful of water so that a crow could drink from it was set on a dish. As soon as a strong man rocked it to and fro, would the water spill? Yes, Lord. Even so, monks, when a monk has so made become and made abundant the five-limbed Aryan right concentration, he can bend the mind to knowledge, whatever the range may be. Monks, imagine a tank on a level piece of ground, with dikes built up on its four sides, brimful of water so that a crow could drink from it. As soon as a strong man loosened the sides here and there, would the water flow out? Yes, Lord. Even so, monks, when a monk has so made become concentration, he can bend the mind to knowledge, whatever the range may be. Monks, suppose a carriage harnessed with thoroughbreds, with goat hanging handy, were to stand on the level, where four main roads meet. As soon as the coachman, a capable trainer and driver of horses, had mounted and grasped the reins in his left hand, and with his right seized the goat, he would drive on or back, as and how he pleased. Even so, monks, when a monk has so become and made abundant the 5-limbed Aryan-right concentration, he can bend the mind to realize by higher knowledge whatever condition is so realizable and become an eyewitness in every case, whatever the range may be. Should he wish to experience psychic power, to hear deva sounds, to read minds, to call to mind previous dwellings, to see beings faring on according to their deeds, to enter and abide with the asavas destroyed in the emancipation by mind, in the emancipation by wisdom, he becomes an eyewitness in every case, whatever the range may be. That's the end of the sutta. In this case, the Buddha is again stressing the point of jhana, concentration, that by attaining concentration, the jhanas, you can attain the higher knowledges if you want. The last part was talking about the abhinyas, the higher knowledges, the ability to display psychic power, to hear deva sounds, sounds of spirits, etc., to read the minds of others, to remember previous lifetimes, and to see beings being born and dying and passing away according to karma. And lastly, to attain the destruction of the asavas that can easily be attained with Aryan-right concentration. And then in this sutta, the Buddha gives the similes for the jhanas. The first jhana, the Buddha gave a simile of a person taking soap bath powder and squeezing it and putting water and gradually making it up into a ball, so that the whole ball of powder becomes enveloped with moisture, saturated with moisture. Every part of it, every particle of it is saturated with water. So in the same way, the Buddha is saying in the first jhana, every part of the body, every particle of the body is suffused with delight and pleasure, piti and sukha. And secondly, the Buddha gave a simile of the second jhana of a pool. And the pool, in the bottom of the pool, in the center bottom of the pool, a spring comes up. And the spring of cold water wells up and pervades every part of the lake. In the same way, this delight and pleasure wells up from within you and pervades every part of the body. And the third jhana, the Buddha gives a simile of a pond of water lilies which grow in the water, and water is covering them all over. Every part of them is covered by water. In the same way, a person in the third jhana experiences pleasure without delight, without pity, in every particle of the body. And then the fourth jhana, the Buddha gives a simile of a person covered with a white cloth from the head down to the toes. In the same way, a person in the fourth jhana, the body is completely bright. The mind is, the brightness pervades every part of the body. That from here you can understand why the fourth jhana is so important. Because some other sutta, you remember, I've said before that the condition for insight, the Buddha said, is a bright mind. When the mind becomes very bright, that is the best condition for attaining insight and wisdom. That is why the fourth jhana is a very, very good state for attaining wisdom. And the last one is the contemplation sign, the meditation sign is rightly reflected upon, and so that wisdom arises. That is the Aryan-right concentration. Now he comes to Sutta 5.3.29. The Buddha said, monks, there are these 5 advantages of a meditation walking path, cankama. It hardens one for traveling. It is good for striving. It is healthy. Its use tends to good digestion after one has eaten and drunk, munched and crunched. And lastly, the concentration won from a meditation walking path lasts long. Monks, these are the 5 advantages of a meditation walking path, the cankama. So the Buddha said, walking meditation is good. It hardens one for traveling. He becomes fit for traveling. It is good for striving. It's good for striving in the holy life. It is healthy, keeps your body very healthy. You walk and walk. And it's good for digestion after you have eaten, especially after a heavy meal. It's good to walk meditation to help digestion. And then the concentration can last long also. These are the various advantages of walking meditation. Now the next sutta is 5.3.30. Once the Exalted One, with a great company of monks, while wandering for alms among the Kosalis, came to the Brahmin village of Ichanangala, belonging to them. And there the Exalted One dwelt in the Ichanangala woodland thicket. Now the Brahmin householders of Ichanangala heard of this. Mark you, they said, the recluse, Master Gotama, the Sakyan, gone forth from the Sakyan clan, has come to Ichanangala and dwells in our wood nearby. And of this same Master Gotama, this excellent report goes abroad. He is the Exalted One, Arahant, perfectly enlightened, endowed with knowledge and practice, well gone one, world knower, unsurpassed tamer of tameable men, teacher of devas and men, Buddha, the Exalted One. Having realized higher knowledge himself, he declares it to this world with its devas and maras and brahmas, to this earth with its recluses and brahmins, its devas and men, and he teaches Dhamma, lovely in the beginning, lovely in the middle, and lovely in the end. And he sets forth the holy life, utterly pure and perfect, both in spirit and letter. Well indeed is it to see such arahants. And when the night was over, they went to the wood, taking with them a great deal of hard and soft food, and stood outside the entrance, making a great din and uproar. Now at that time the Venerable Nagita was the Exalted One's personal attendant. Then the Exalted One called to the Venerable Nagita and said, "Who are these, Nagita, that make this great din and uproar? Like fishermen, I think, with a great haul of fish. These men, Lord, are the Brahmin householders of Ichanangala who wait outside the gateway. They have brought much hard and soft food for the Exalted One and for the Sangha." And the Buddha said, "I have nothing to do with homage, Nagita, nor has homage anything to do with me. Whosoever cannot obtain at will, easily and without difficulty, this happiness of renunciation, this happiness of seclusion, this happiness of calm, this happiness of enlightenment, which I can obtain at will, easily and without difficulty, let him enjoy that dung-like happiness, that sluggish happiness, that happiness gotten of gains, favors and flattery. Lord, let the Exalted One accept their offerings. Let the well-gone one accept. Now, Lord, is the time for the Blessed One to accept. For wheresoever henceforth the Exalted One shall go, the Brahmin householders of town and country will be just as inclined to give. Lord, just as when the rain deva rains big drops, the water flows with the incline. Even so, Lord, wheresoever the Exalted One shall henceforth go, the Brahmin householders of town and country will be inclined. And why, Lord? It is because of the virtue and wisdom of the Exalted One." And the Buddha said again, "Nagita, I have nothing to do with homage, nor has homage anything to do with me. Whosoever cannot obtain at will, easily and without difficulty, this happiness of renunciation, this happiness of seclusion, this happiness of calm, this happiness of enlightenment, which I can obtain at will, easily and without difficulty, let him enjoy that dung-like happiness, that sluggish happiness, that happiness gotten of gains, favors and flattery. Verily, Nagita, whosoever eats, drinks, munches and crunches must answer the calls of nature. Such is the issue of it. Whosoever loves, to him change and separation must come. Grief, lamentation, suffering, sorrow and despair. Such is the issue of it. Whosoever is bent on applying himself to the sign of the unattractive, in him disgust for the sign of the attractive is established. Such is the issue of it. Whosoever abides, seeing impermanence in the 6 spheres of contact, in him disgust for contact is established. Such is the issue of it. Verily, Nagita, whosoever abides, seeing the rise and fall in the 5-fold aggregates of attachment, in him disgust for attachment is established. Such is the issue of it. That's the end of the sutta. It's an interesting sutta. It shows that the Buddha likes the peace and quiet, and he doesn't like noisy people around him. That's why early in the morning, when all these Brahmins came with a lot of offerings, because they made so much noise, the Buddha said they are just like fishermen and refused to accept their offerings. And this Nagita, his attendant, was trying to persuade the Buddha to accept the offerings, so that later, wherever they go, people also will give a lot of offerings. But the Buddha wasn't happy to accept. And the Buddha said, got nothing to do with that kind of happiness. The Buddha said, his kind of happiness is the happiness of renunciation, the happiness of seclusion, the happiness of calm, the happiness of enlightenment. And this refers to the jhanas. The jhanas are the happiness of renunciation, the happiness of seclusion, the happiness of enlightenment even. So the Buddha is more concerned with getting this happiness that surpasses the world rather than worldly happiness. So you see, sometimes the Buddha can refuse to accept offerings if it is not conducive to the holy life, as in this case. He would prefer that they allow him to practice in seclusion and give him more privacy, and he's willing to accept less offerings. And then the last part of it, the Buddha gave some interesting teaching. The Buddha says that whosoever loves, to him or her, change and separation must come. Grief, lamentation, suffering, sorrow and despair. Most of us, we like to love somebody, but when you love somebody, you have to pay for it, because change and separation must come. What is this change? This change refers to that you love somebody, but after some time, somebody might not love you, or fall out of love with you, and then you get a heartbreak. Or separation comes. For example, you love your child, maybe your child passes away, and you get a lot of grief. So, if you have love, grief, lamentation, suffering, sorrow and despair will come. And then if you practice the sign, the asubha, the sign of the unattractive, to see the loathsomeness of the body, then you will have disgust for the sign of the attractive. That means the sign of beauty loses the appeal to you if you constantly see the unattractiveness of the body, the loathsomeness of the body. And then if you constantly try to see impermanence in the 6 spheres of contact, that means in the 6 sense doors, seeing, hearing, smelling, taste, touch and thinking, if you constantly see impermanence, it's on constant change in the 6 sense doors, then disgust for contact is established. And when you have disgust for contact, you go into the mind, you go into the inner self, you try to cut off the outer world. That is the going back into the inner self, is the way to go back to peace, to Nibbana, because the state of Nibbana is separate from the world. The world is the Buddha, and the First Noble Truth. The Buddha said all existence is suffering. That's why we have to run away from existence. And then if we constantly see the arising and decay of the 5 aggregates of attachment, that means the 5 aggregates, pancha, khanda. First one is body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. These 5 things is very important to see how they change. Then if you can see how they constantly change, and then slowly you let go of the associating the self with these 5 things.